I like salad. Do you like salad?
Hi, I'm Hostion Ho. I'm living in Vancouver, BC, Canada, unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm an immigrant to Canada from China.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea coming to you from Victoria, but more importantly known as unceded Akwesasne territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and I am an immigrant from the United States of America. And you're listening to
Canadian salad.
Canadian salad. Welcome back, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Yay.
Yay. It is truly fall, and I am just so thankful to be here. How are you, Hoshin?
Oh, fall is one of my favorite seasons because usually have a lot of excuse to just stay at home.
Yes.
And you can get to wear sweaters. You can layer up.
I dusted off my leggings today. I literally blew off the dust and then just put them on because I felt like dust is a part of things dying and they're kind of being reborn. You know, it's just so ode to my leggings. There you go.
I didn't know your leggings getting a spotlight today.
They do. No one can see them. That's a good thing. But yes, shout out to them. But yeah,
I'm very excited for today's topic.
Yeah, me too.
Andrea, do you know what we're going to talk about today?
I do. What we're going to talk about is when religion or faith of an immigrant finds a journey of its own. Yeah, I think I'm nervous because this is a topic that is something that is very deep-seated in my heart and yet is also painful, but it is an immigrant journey nonetheless. And I do want to share a brief disclaimer. We are going to talk about religion and faith in Canada from my immigrant experience. In no way am I trying to reflect the ideas of the majority of immigrants, but I do really want to just let people know that there is such diversity and there is so many different interpretations and expressions of faith and religion that it's really, really important that what you hear in this podcast is really just one drop in the grand old Canadian salad that we share. So
exactly. And also another disclaimer, Andrea is a woman of faith and I am atheist. So I think you're going to make this podcast even more interesting.
It will. And just a huge thank you to you, Hoshin, for being willing to have this conversation, because even though it's something you don't maybe relate to on a religious level, I really just do appreciate you be willing to have this conversation and just explore this with me. You've been a huge sounding board and I love you very much. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And I think everyone should, be curious of things that's out there and that makes who you are. And I know that as you are a woman of faith and religion is so important to you. I think as a friend, I should hold space for you to, of course, to freely talk about it.
Yeah. And that's exactly the goal of this episode really is how can we do that for all people with faith or none at all? Yeah.
But before we get to that point, we should have an understanding how faith is in Canada, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So do you have any news to share with us?
I do. There were so many articles. There was Pew Research articles. There was Statistics Canada. There are so many discussions and academic articles related to this very topic. But the one I chose was put out by the National Post last year. And the title was that new Canadians are more religious than natural-born Canadians. And the study was conducted with the Cardis Report and the Angus Reid Institute. And they surveyed newcomers to Canada and people who also were born in Canada to kind of gauge the differences between the two. And so where newcomers really stood out in this particular survey was that typically they tend to hold deeper religious beliefs than those born in this country. They attend their religious places of worship more often, and they are looking for opportunities to really be true to their faith.
What do you think that means for Canadians and, every one of us who lives here?
It is really, really fascinating. I think it means a lot of different things. I think for one, it really capitalizes in the fact that many people who do come to Canada look to Canada for this maybe second opportunity to either practice their faith freely without persecution. Others will come to Canada seeking to get space away from maybe more traditional, heavy-handed, very fundamental religious practices. And so, in many ways, identifying with that non-religious category or that spiritually uncertain category. I think for others, it could be I don't even know if I believe anything. And in some ways, Canada is this opportunity to explore that. And so it should mean for those of us living in Canada that we acknowledge that there is a very diverse expression of what faith can be and what religion can be. For many who do come, I think, and I'll allude to this into my story a little bit, but there is this idea that some of our religions are known for very extremist ideas. And so when we come to a new country, and rightfully so, because history is just packed full of what has been done in the name of God or in the name of Christianity. And it's really, really important that for many of us, we still carry that baggage. I know I carry that baggage with my Christian faith. And I even hesitate to use the word Christian because of the heavy baggage that comes with that term and what has been done in the name of this particular set of ideas. I think in many ways, Canada is secular. Canada does not necessarily have, at least from the government's point of view, you don't see that there is this enforcement of, well, we are Canadians, we all need to be going to this temple or to this church or to this congregation, right? So there is a secularism, but I think that secularism sometimes really blinds the multicultural diversity of faith, because there is still discrimination in workplaces for women wearing hijabs, or there still is discrimination towards people who want to pray on Fridays and they can't because they have to work, right? And so there is this idea that, yes, Canada is secular, but it still leans towards Christian holidays, and that conflicts with maybe children in school who don't practice the Christian faith. And I think that there is a duty and a responsibility for all of us living here, immigrant and non-immigrant alike, that we protect these multicultural expressions of faith and protect those who are secular, who do not have a faith, who are atheist or agnostic, who are wanting to just live their lives in a humanist way, that we provide that space for every single person. Because it's important that as much as Canada is an opportunity for those of us who might want to redefine our faith, it also should be as equally as an opportunity for those who want to practice no faith at all and be able to freely live their lives without being evangelized, without being, telemarketed and like convinced of a certain way of belief, right?
I agree. Yeah. I think sometimes Canadians, or me included, we are a bit sensitive talking about religion because one, maybe it's not a topic that we're familiar with. And second is all the preconception of what we had for religion, they are usually not great. For example, like in history, many war was conducted, in the name of God, for example, and or extreme Islamic, war crime as well. Like all of this things that we know, kind of, in some sense, speaking for myself, prevented me to hold space or even ask question or be curious of what that religion specifically means to all these people, because because
it makes sense,
what I
because
know.
the face of it is ugly. It has killed people, it has committed genocide. So in many, many ways, that is exactly where you need to be, as far away from that as possible, because it is awful. And that's exactly what we should create more, is those safe spaces, and recognizing that what fundamentally that I've grown up believing has really caused a lot of harm, and how do you hold both of those things? How do you hold a faith that's sincere to you and also hold the reality and the truth of what it's done to people?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I also want to echo to the point that discrimination of faith is a thing that is definitely out there. And
Yeah.
I do agree that if we are fighting for equality, it's not just equality for the atheists, for the people who doesn't believe in it. I think it's also equality for people who believes in it. I never understand the idea of if someone doing something doesn't harm you, why do you have to get out of your way to prevent someone doing something? Same as a religion practice. If they're just in their temple or they pray on Fridays or whatever they have to do to fulfill their duty as a believer, and we should always, hold space for them to do so.
Yeah.
Without judgment, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Without thinking, oh, maybe they are just like too dumb to know better, or they're just they brainwashed to believe that is something to be true.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think we should always remember that the no judgment part is what brings us to the equality part.
Right. Exactly. Well said. I think the more we talk about issues, in many ways, the easier it is to have those conversations and to be unassuming. But the fact that we don't have these conversations enough, even in Canada, faith and politics is kind of these, well, we should probably just leave those at the front door. And I understand it at workplaces that can be a bit contentious. Would it be contentious if actually we just normalized it and we actually accepted the fact that this is where everyone is in their own space?
I agree. I think it's such a touchy subject. As long as we understand that we are just having this conversation, not to judge people, not to we do not have an agenda. We're not preaching anyone. We're just having a conversation only for the purpose of understanding each other, where we are from and where we meet, where we differentiate, but at the same time, respect each other. I think as long as that's the environment that we're creating for whatever conversation we're having, we should able to have this quote unquote sensitive conversations.
Yeah. And we'll get into later, like how we can foster those safe spaces.
I agree. Yeah. So Andrea, I'm just curious, what is your journey like of your faith after you moved to Canada?
Oh gosh. So just to start off, when I was thinking about this podcast, and forgive me if I do choke up a bit, but in many ways, Canada was a place to set my faith free. So I grew up being told about this person named Jesus who wanted to wipe away every tear and take away the pain of the world. And as a 5-year-old, like that's just sounded amazing. Like who wouldn't, like, yes, no one should live with pain, in my 5-year-old heart, a very sensitive child. Growing up, that love for people and my love of justice, didn't matter what line or what religious reflection it had. Like I wanted justice for everyone. I remember growing up and I was a person who would always defend the kid who was being picked on by the bully. I would defend my mom in public spaces when she was being made fun of. There was always just this innate sense of right and wrong. But my upbringing was very Western, evangelical, fundamental Christianity. In the sense of you had to be voting Republican to be a Christian. You believed that the country was founded on Christian principles. And this was the narrative that I was taught growing up, and I believed it. But there was still this just deep, deep desire that when there was some contradictions in my own heart and head, like, wait a minute, like, why are we hating this person? Like Jesus says that we should just love our neighbor as ourselves. There was that disconnect, but I was never free enough to kind of separate the two and really examine the very hurtful pieces of my religion and the very beautiful pieces of my faith. And so I moved to Canada to, of course, pursue my master's degree. Yay. Yeah. And I think the first catalyst that made this shift in my faith was a lack of community. In the States, I met with, it was a house church that I attended, and we were all about, community service and helping the old lady down the street and whatever that looked like. When I moved here, it was hard to find a community that had that same kind of posture. So it felt very isolating in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing was at Royal Roads, and we talked about this in our last episode, when I heard about the residential schools and what was done in the name
Yes.
of God and divine right.
Yeah.
And honestly, that broke a huge part of my heart because I was hearing how these biblical texts were used to support genocide, and they were used to support slavery in the States as well.
Yeah.
But for some reason, being in Canada, it hit so much harder. And I was really confronted with, how do I hold this faith that I love so much, but this religion that I just want to throw completely away? Then came the election of Trump, and majority of Christians voted for him. My husband and I drove down, and we voted against him. Didn't do anything. Thank goodness. Yeah, thank God. Absolutely. Absolutely. But we were crestfallen and we were broken, and we thought, how is love your neighbor as yourself, faith, religion, whatever you want to call it, voting for Trump? Like, it didn't align up. And then the January 6th, the insurrection, where Christians were hanging up nooses and saying that God has given us this country, that was another huge piece that completely destroyed me. And so these three pieces, and there were a few others, I won't get into detail, but it was this outward expression and this verbal noise and this toxic Christianity that I kept seeing within my friends and my family, and I didn't know how to reconcile it anymore. I couldn't. I couldn't be on that camp anymore. I couldn't call myself Christian because Christian became this hater of people, literally hater of immigrants, of minorities, of people from the LGBTQ community, trans people. I couldn't reconcile what this was anymore. And so it was a huge shift because, again, I couldn't find a community that resonated with how I felt. But I didn't know where to go. And so in many ways, my spirituality is very unique and of my own. I don't connect with white evangelical churches here or Anglican churches. And I tried. I did try. I still get so easily triggered by what church is here in Canada that I'm not ready to go back in that space. And in many ways, I find church sitting on the beach and letting the wind blow through my hair. It's very different. It doesn't depend on an every Sunday event. It doesn't need a pastor to tell me what to think. Having this conversation with you or having other faiths in my life provide this beautiful church that I get to listen and I get to share someone's story. I get to be in this person's presence because I believe that person is divinely made and has an immense amount of love and purpose. So that becomes this new expression that doesn't have a description and doesn't have the place in traditional religious structures.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I don't know why they remind me of one of my grandmas. She is Buddhist, and there's many variations and branches of Buddhism, even in China. She had some kind of religious practice of burning some incense or has some ceremony on specific days, and there's certain things on certain day, like for example, I believe in Buddha's birthday, she will only eat vegan stuff, for example. There's something that principle she kind of follows, but in general, there's no Buddhist group for her to go to. I mean, there is a temple, and I believe she does go maybe once a while, kind of thing. But she never have that need to have that kind of group. She talks about karma, which is a big Buddhist thing. Talk about being kind. Talk about being loving. And that how suffering is also a gift of life. All those things. And I think your example also just remind me of my grandma, of how she sees religion as how part of her lifestyle rather than this kind of systems that she had to follow. I think that's maybe the difference between religious and faith for me is, religion is something somehow you have to fit into, and faith is something that just becomes part of you and you live with every aspect of your life, and it's just a guiding principle, guiding light for you
Yeah.
to how walk your life with.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I'm honored to think that is she still living, Hoshin?
She is still
She
living. Yeah,
is.
I'm not saying
Oh.
you're old. That's
No,
not a
no, no, no.
comparison. That's
I
not a
mean, I'm
comparison I'm drawing.
42. No. No, I would love to meet her. Gosh, she sounds amazing. But you're right. I think maybe for some people, religion gives you language around unknown things or
Mhm.
the miraculous or the mysteries that maybe science can't explain. I could see that. I can see that we kind of want to have that language around it. But at the end of the day, like you said, in many ways, where religion kind of creates that structure, it's faith that creates who you are. And and you
Mhm.
can hold it however you need to, whether near or far, like it becomes your own. And it expresses itself in the ways that it wants to or needs to. And as long as it is respectful and it is loving and it is kind, you know, it's okay. You know,
It really
yeah.
is. It's okay, obviously, if you use those
No,
principles, so-called principle, quote unquote, to
right, right,
harm other people, to
right,
further your own agenda.
right.
That is
Exactly.
when it becomes not
Exactly.
okay. And sadly, in history, there's many
Mm-hmm.
people hold those names, use
Mm-hmm.
those names to only serve their own agenda.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I will say, I'm sure many immigrants might feel the same way. You know, we talked about how when we go back to our countries of origin, we change and we see things differently. And I think with my faith, I go back home to the States, and it is very much difficult to navigate those relationships because we are so very different in what we fundamentally believe now. Where we used to be the
Yeah.
same, we aren't anymore. But as long as you keep navigating, keep going forward and pursuing what you want that to look like, I think that's so important.
What about other people of faith who moved to Canada?
Mm,
What would you say to them,
mm,
who are struggle to find their faith community or struggle to find
mm,
their spirituality,
yeah.
or people who escaped, to Canada
Mm-hmm.
so they can, find a new tradition or kind of reconcile with this kind of expectations of religious
Mm-hmm.
traditions?
Yeah. Yeah. I think to encourage anyone out there who is listening and who has a faith or a religion that they adhere to, I would say see Canada as this opportunity to explore what that looks like. In many ways, it is complicated. I think many of us might have familial expectations of how we need to live our faith, right? My dad always asks this, and he sometimes listens to this podcast. But anyway, that's okay. I'm going to say it anyway. But my dad's like, "Have you found a church yet?" And I keep saying, not really. We've tried some spaces, but we just haven't found one yet. And because I end with yet, in many ways, I'm giving him an answer that in some ways gives him the peace that he maybe needs to think that I'm not off in the weeds or somewhere. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I'm being honest and saying, I'm not going to a church, so I think there's a way you can be honest with yourself and with your family without being vulnerable, without saying, I'm really, really struggling with, how do I practice this? I think at the same time, for those who do not have a religious affiliation or belief, maybe you are coming to Canada and you want to get as far away from your religion as possible. I just want to say that I
Yeah.
understand and I get that. And as lonely as that might be, as scary as that might be, because you're daring to believe who you are outside of these four walls of religion or these expectations, what you grew up with, as scary as it'd be, know that there are people out here, including myself, Hoshin, who want to create those spaces and be a source of compassion and share our mutual love for humanity and recognize that this is a journey and that nurturing each other is really, really important. And if we maintain that, I think people will be able to find those expressions. There's ways to honor maybe those sacred parts that we want to keep. And it just might look different now. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. I mean, I always encourage everyone to find
yeah,
your own path
Yeah.
not your
You do.
families, not your religions, not
Mm-hmm.
whatever expectation were put on you, because this society has built by
Mm-hmm.
people before you. You can be the
Yeah.
person who leads a society forward, not,
Yeah.
do not follow. You don't have to follow whatever path was walked before
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, religions as well, I assumed.
Yeah, no, and you do, and you've done that for me in all of the years of our relationship. I've never felt that I couldn't talk about it. In fact, if you told me about hurtful things that Christians have done to you, like it's always just like made me so grieved, and there is a lot of grief in this journey,
Yeah. I mean, to be very honest, sometimes it is a trigger. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
heard the word Jesus,
Sure.
unless I'm, saying in a joke, then I'm
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
But if like in a serious conversation and people use the word Jesus or Christian, Catholic, sometimes I will have like a very small voice of trigger in my head,
Yeah.
just because of, as we mentioned, all the history has been done and all the awful thing people have been done in the name of them. And as a gay man, definitely, I guess, living some of the trauma still.
Yeah.
But I also understand with you, I understand you always lead with love and understanding and tenderness. So I also understand that when you use the word Jesus or Christianity, you don't mean all those hurtful things that's done before you, or even, still happening. I know you're not part of it, because I think when we talk about like generalization of things like religion, not everyone who believes in a certain thing are the same.
Right.
Even people who believe in the same thing can also against some of the principle of that thing they believed in. So I think that's also one thing, I hope everyone understands too. As an atheist, maybe I don't necessarily believe in what you believe, but hopefully everyone out there also understand that everyone that has a religion or believes in a religion, not all of them are the same. Not everyone is an extremist either.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I really appreciate you saying that. And honestly, that's one thing I do look up to you for is, the triggering still happens, but you're still willing to have a conversation.
I also want to thank you too for, being so open and vulnerable with me of this conversation. I understand it's a very vulnerable conversation with you.
Yeah.
For people who don't know this, when we were prepping for this podcast, Andrea broke down into tears because of how vulnerable and difficult even this conversation is for her. I also try to also want to tell you that I share some of that sympathy to you, because I understand if you love someone so much and you know that something that you love so much had caused so much harm to others, I understand how painful that can be.
Yeah.
On this
Thank
podcast.
you, Hostion. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
You can cry. It's okay.
Yeah. No, and this was, and just you provided such a sounding board and helped navigate a lot of these thoughts, because I think in the past years, and I feel like a lot of people do experience a lot of grief with extremism and what things that are now being said and done in the name of religion, in the name of God, and it's not helping. It just keeps hurting, and it's awful, and it's terrible. And if we can be an example, if if we can just, Hoshin, you should write a book someday, I think. But I think if we can have more relationships like this and have these conversations and not be afraid of it, I don't know how many of my Christian friends have honest conversations with atheists or Muslims or Hindus.
I think I couldn't help. Yeah, I couldn't help thinking that, like, again, that is, as you mentioned in that data, as many newcomers are religious. I think it's easy for us or know many people of faith are facing a lot of discrimination, sometimes even harassment, just because maybe they wear hijab, or especially where people wear hijab actually even Islamic faith, because of the extremists was happening. They definitely face a lot of this kind of unnecessary hate, but I would like to believe most of these people are not. Do not abide, do not believe, do not stand with any of that hurt that has been going on. And yet, and then they're also using hurt to answer hurt. Using harm to answer hurt is also never a good way. Why can't we just try to foster a space for all of us to talk about this?
Right.
What is happening? How can I be hold a space for you? How can you also maybe help me to understanding how your faith works or how it's important to you and what you believed in? And then so we can have the conversation, have the bridge, over all of us.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, Hoshin. I think you've touched a bit on them. You and I want to foster safe spaces for people of faith. And one thing that I heard you say was, in many ways, be unassuming.
I think it's a very important principle too. I think in any conversation,
right.
In any conversation, it's always important. If someone has something that is very uniquely different from you that you don't understand, you should never hold any biases, no matter how much news you read on, how many posts you scroll on social media.
Exactly.
You should just throw them out the window. Just let them speak. Ask questions.
Yeah.
What does this mean to you? I mean, that's what I read online. But you can be completely different.
Yeah, exactly. That curiosity, that's another part of creating safe space for people of faith, is that curiosity. A big shout out to, I have some sisters, I call them my sisters, but they are Muslim, and most of them are from Libya. But when we hang out, inshallah, like if God wills, right? And so there are times where I'll say, well, I'll see you next time. And, inshallah, right? And we just smile at each other because we're connecting, in this space that we still love each other, and we are Christian and Muslim, but that is still something that we can share with each other regardless of differences. I think the last thing I think that we could foster for people of faith is being a sounding board for people. Hoshin, you were that for me when we were discussing this. But I think when January 6th happened in the States and the insurrection happened, and I saw that not really as political, but as this Christian movement, this Christian extremism. There was a lot of devastation in my heart about it. And I had maybe one friend who understood. She's from the States. But you look around, and in many ways, it's like, well, everyone's in Canada. At least we're not them. It's like, at least you're not them. At the same time, what the heck is happening? And I need to process this. And I want to tell the world I'm not like this at all. I don't want to believe this way. And yet there really wasn't a community or people that I could talk about that, and I understand that even people who we had our classmate who Dima, who was from raised in Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and she too expressed that there is parts of my faith that I want to hold on to, being a Muslim, but there's so much extremism that I don't want anything to do with that. And so if she didn't have that safe space, if I didn't have that safe space, sometimes we get lost in the weeds and we just feel very, very lonely. So being that sounding board and providing that space for someone allows for a different kind of community to shine forth.
I agree. And also that human empathy as well.
Yeah.
Is important, especially if they're your friends. A whole safe space for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Again, Hoshin, I just want to thank you for listening and for being willing to have this conversation with me. And I do hope it's encouraging. Again, this is one perspective of one immigrant, and this is in no way reflective of the beautiful masterpiece that all of us who are newcomers to Canada hold. But in many ways, let this be the beginning of a conversation. And if you don't have a faith, or if you were born in Canada, create those open and safe spaces for your friends who are more religious, who do have that. And also, if someone doesn't have a faith and they are maybe hesitant to have these conversations, be willing to meet them where they're at. Don't force the conversation, and maybe try to be that good friend that we all need. So.
Yes, well said. Applaud to that.
Thank you. I'm bowing. You can't see.
Yeah.
No.
You should write a book.
I've written stuff. It's just really, really angry. So, but no one needs to read that. So
a manifesto.
Yes, a manifesto of grief. But anyway, So it
Anyway,
is,
yes.
Canadian pop quiz time.
Yes, my favorite part.
Yes, this is the part where Hoshin and I ask each other a question based on anything related to the topic. It could be history, politics, food, anything. But we have not prepped each other, and we do not know what we are going to ask. So, Hoshin, I will let you go first since I've done a lot of talking.
Okay, I will go first. So
No
I don't know whether
pressure.
you know, you probably you probably know that Christians are probably the most popular religion in Canada.
Yes, I do.
Do you know the second most popular?
The second most popular. That's a very good question. Is it Buddhism?
No, not even
No.
close.
Why didn't I even catch this? Second religion. Hindu?
No, but Hindu is third.
It's third. Shoot. Shoot. Oh no. I don't know.
Islam.
Islam. Okay.
Based on a 2021 census, so Christians overall represents 53% of the population, and then is followed by Islam, which is 4.9, Hinduism 2.3, Sikh is 2.1.
Okay.
But atheists also, representing the atheists is about 34.6.
Hey, I love that. There's some representation. That's good. That is good. No, and I think we should do an episode on like holidays. But I feel like Canada has a butt ton of room to make space for other observances.
Holidays, yes.
Yeah, or even just like have a holiday where we don't believe anything and we're just having a day off because we can. Guys, come on. There's a few holidays
like that.
Yeah, exactly. We need Friend Day. All right.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, let's get rid of some of these Christian holidays and be like Friend Day. Yay!
That would be so much better. We celebrate family all the time. What about friends? Friends are a very important crucial part of our sanity.
Yes. All right, Hoshin. So my question is, when did Canada finally rule the guaranteed freedom of religion and conscience?
Oh, I definitely read about that, but I do not remember
what year.
Which year.
Yeah.
Oh, like the 70s?
Higher.
Older?
Higher than the 70s. Oh, I guess that I'm saying backwards. Okay, so it's newer than the 70s.
Oh, really? The 90s?
Oh, not that new.
Also the 80s then. 1982.
That's it. Yes.
Yes.
The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom was written in 1982, and that guaranteed religion and conscience. So, yay. And then the Canadian Multiculturalism Act was passed in 1988, and the Canadian Human Rights Act in 1985. So, it was around that time where everyone was just like, yes, we need to get this on the books. I think we still have many ways we can enhance those rights and freedoms.
Definitely.
So yes, but yeah, the 80s were a good time for these things. So
I was not even born.
Oh gosh, I feel so old. Okay. Well, thanks for listening.
You're younger than my grandma. It's fine.
That's true. Yay me. Oh no, younger. And your mom, come on. I'm not that
true
aged.
You're not that old. It's fine.
Yes. But please do listen to our next episode. Hoshin, what is our next episode gonna be? Do you have any clue?
I actually don't know any clue. Oh my God, I'm
you
so
don't
not prepared.
know.
I don't remember.
Begins with the letter P. Yes.
We're gonna talk about patriarchy next episode. Oh my God, you can see who's the not prepared one here.
It is okay. So stay tuned. We're gonna talk about patriarchy in Canada.
Talk about men. My favorite topic.
It's kind of one of mine. I don't know.
We both love men, so it's
we do love a man, but we don't patriarchy.
We do love
anyway.
all men. Yeah.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Ooh.
It's going to be juicy. It's going to be really, really great. But do follow us on Instagram, Canadian Salad. You can go to our website, canadiansalad.ca, and listen to us on all major platforms. And please share us with your friends and family, and subscribe and leave us some great reviews because we love you. That's all.
We do.
Okay.
And you love us too.
We know you do. We can see the love and the hearts just pouring out from those invisible voids of the internet. So have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you next week. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Canadian Salad is written and produced in British Columbia, Canada by Hostion Ho and Andrea McCoy. Theme music is by Naver Avetyan from Pixabay.
This has been a good Janklin production.